Where did you find him?
He was lying here, alone in the rain.
Chicago rain slicks the bus station as Maya, a tired waitress, spots a teen collapsed by the curb. In his pocket, a silver card, only a number. She calls. A calm voice answers, Alexander Westcott. Minutes later, SUVs surge in and the billionaire kneels, whispering, Aiden. Power meets fear, a father exposed. Who drugged this boy, and why was Maya the one meant to find him? The lake wind found the tallest buildings first. On the 42nd floor above Wacker Drive, Alexander Westcott watched the river lift a slice of silver under an October sky. Deep blue eyes, dark brown hair with a clean gray streak, side-swept. A strong, square jawline, thick eyebrows, a warm smile he could switch on at will. Tall, broad-shouldered, his custom navy suit cut to a V. Certainty had a cost. He kept the receipt in his pocket, a thin silver emergency card engraved with only a phone number. He had made duplicates after a threat that named his son, Aiden. He flipped the card with his thumb and felt the cold edge. Cameras on the townhouse steps. Drivers who waited even when sent away. Briefings that sounded like weather reports, all risk, little sky. 5 minutes, sir, said Dana Chu from the doorway. Head of security. Calm eyes, hands never idle. I heard, he said. Patch price for 9:30. She nodded, then added, Aiden has robotics after school. He wants to take the bus. He asked me not to shadow him. That sentence cut cleaner than any headline. He asked you, or he told you? He asked, she said, but he means it. Alexander breathed against the glass. 2 blocks of cover, unmarked, no direct tail. He will spot it, Dana said. I know, he said. He needs to feel free. I need to know he is not. When she left, the office quieted until he could hear the river horns below. He turned the silver card until it caught a stripe of sun, a symbol of a promise he could keep even when he could not be there. Call this number, and someone who loves you will come. Aiden arrived at noon, lanky and restless, a teenager learning the geometry of his own limbs. He had his mother's patience, which meant he did not spend it easily. You look tired, Alexander said. You look stressed, Aiden said, and smiled. Some of the distance between boardroom and kitchen dissolved. They ate at the small table in the executive lounge, chicken soup that tasted like a decent apology. I know you want space, Alexander said. I also know what lives in the gaps between stops on the red line. Aiden kept his eyes on the spoon. I am not a headline. I am not your company. You are my son, Alexander said. He set the silver card between them. If anything feels wrong, call this number. Do not think. Call. Aiden traced the digits with his thumb. There is no name. There does not need to be, Alexander said. It rings me first. The boy exhaled, and his shoulders lowered. You trust me to go alone. I trust you to know when you are not, he said. The afternoon moved like any other. A vendor argument at 11 that pressed his jaw tight. Between meetings, he watched a short clip from Aiden's first fishing trip. A boy in an oversized life vest shouting, I got one. A father answering, I see you. At 4, Aiden slung on his backpack. Robotics, he said. I will text when I am done. Text, even if you forget, Alexander said with a faint smile. He resisted the urge to send Dana again. Trust had to land somewhere. It could not circle forever. He walked his son to the elevator. The doors closed with a soft hush. In the reflection, he saw the armor of his suit and, behind it, a man who counted victories in hours safely spent. He slipped the spare silver card back into his pocket. He told himself he would try to leave early. He told himself the card was enough. Outside, the light tipped toward evening. Across the city, a waitress would soon clock out, pockets warm with tips, shoes wet. Along the bus routes, October would practice its rain. Alexander stood at the window and watched the first drops find the river, silver on silver, and thought of the number waiting to be called. The October rain fell hard enough to blur street signs and bus timetables. Maya Torres tugged her thin jacket tighter as she stepped out of the diner, a late shift behind her. Her sneakers squeaked against the wet pavement, the chill reaching straight through her clothes. She wanted nothing more than to catch the bus and curl up in her small apartment, away from the noise of downtown Chicago. But then she saw him. Near the bus shelter, half slumped against the bench, a boy lay motionless. His jeans were soaked. His hoodie clung to him like a second skin. His breathing was shallow, a faint sound almost hidden by the roar of the rain and traffic. Maya froze. For a moment, instinct told her to keep walking. She had seen enough in this city, people drunk, passed out, sleeping rough. None of it was hers to fix. She was just a waitress, barely getting by, no room to carry someone else's trouble. She took 2 steps past him, and then stopped. Something about the boy's face pulled at her. Pale under the flickering streetlight, his lips tinged blue, his chest barely moving. Not drunk, not asleep. Something worse. "Hey," she said, kneeling down. "Can you hear me?" No response, just that fragile breath. Her pulse jumped. She glanced around for help, but the bus stop was empty. Cars rushed by, drivers sealed behind windows. She dug in her bag for her phone, fumbling, when her fingers brushed against something cold in the boy's pocket. A card. Silver. Smooth, with weight that felt deliberate. She turned it over in the glow of the streetlight. No name, no company logo, just one thing engraved deep and clean. A phone number. Maya hesitated, raindrops sliding from her hair onto the card. It could be nothing. A trick. But what if it wasn't? What if it was the only clue to why this boy was lying here, barely breathing? Her thumb hovered over her phone screen, nerves tangling with urgency. She dialed. 1 ring, 2. Then a calm, commanding voice answered, crisp even through the rain. "This is Alexander Westcott." Maya's breath caught. The name meant something. Even she, a waitress who had never read the business pages, had seen it on headlines, heard it on news snippets about cybersecurity and billion-dollar deals. A powerful man, as distant from her life as the stars. I found a boy," she stammered. "He's not waking up. This card was in his pocket." A pause. Then the voice sharpened. "Where are you?" "The bus station at Wabash and 14th. "Stay there. Don't move." Within minutes, headlights cut through the rain. Black SUVs slid to the curb, doors opening in sync. Men in dark coats moved with precision. A medical team carrying equipment. Maya stepped back as they surrounded the boy, and then, in the center of it all, a man stepped out. The streetlight caught his face first. Deep blue eyes. Dark brown hair streaked with elegant gray. Sideswept neat despite the storm. A strong jawline, broad shoulders under a custom navy suit now spotted with rain. His presence pulled the night taut. Alexander Westcott. He strode past the men, ignoring the umbrellas offered to him, and dropped to his knees in the cold puddles beside the boy. "Aiden," he whispered, voice breaking where authority gave way to something raw. His hand cradled the boy's cheek, the other gripping his limp hand. Maya stared, heart thudding. The billionaire who filled headlines was here, kneeling in the rain like any desperate father. And, for the first time, she realized the boy she had found was not just anyone. He was the son of a man whose name could shake markets, yet whose voice now trembled on a single word. "Aiden!" The rain hammered the pavement, pooling around the boy's sneakers as Alexander Westcott pressed his palm to his son's cheek. "Aiden, stay with me," he murmured, his voice low but urgent. His breath fogged in the cold night air, and for a man known for never faltering in boardrooms or battles of will, the cracks in his composure were stark. Maya clutched her bag, uncertain if she should leave or stay. Men in black coats surrounded the scene, efficient and wordless, yet none of them carried the same weight as the father kneeling on the wet sidewalk. Alexander's eyes flicked up, finding Maya. They were sharp, commanding, blue that cut through her like steel. You called? She swallowed hard, nodding. Yes, I found him like this. He could barely breathe. Did anyone touch him before you? His tone was clipped, cold, as if each word weighed something. Maya bristled, then steadied herself. No, just me. I didn't want to leave him alone. For a beat, silence stretched between them. Then, Alexander's expression shifted. He turned back to Aiden, voice breaking as he whispered, Hold on, son, I'm here. The medics moved in, one slipping an oxygen mask over Aiden's face, another checking his pulse. A vial appeared, a syringe prepped, everything executed with clinical speed. Alexander didn't move from the boy's side, his hand gripping Aiden's as if strength could be transferred skin to skin. Pulse is weak, one medic said. We need to move him now. Alexander nodded once. Hospital protocol. Secure transport. Now. The men lifted Aiden carefully onto a stretcher. The silver emergency card slipped from his pocket, landing with a soft clink in a puddle. Maya bent down quickly, picking it up before it sank beneath the rain. She hesitated, then held it out. This was in his pocket. Alexander's hand brushed hers as he took it back. The warmth of his grip startled her, not because it was tender, but because it was trembling. He looked at the card, then at her, as though measuring something far heavier than her words. You did the right thing, he said at last, voice quiet but carrying an intensity that pinned her in place. Before Maya could answer, a door opened on one of the SUVs. Sir, we need to go. Alexander rose, rainwater dripping from the knees of his tailored suit, his presence towering again. He looked back at Maya, that commanding edge returning to his tone. Who are you? Maya, she managed. Maya Torres. I work at the diner down the street. His eyes lingered on her, searching, weighing. Then he gave a single nod. Stay where it's safe, Miss Torres. Tonight is not yours to carry. The words felt final, a dismissal, yet layered beneath was something else, recognition, maybe even gratitude. The SUV doors slammed shut. Engines roared. And, in less than a minute, the convoy was gone, taillights swallowed by the storm. Maya stood alone on the sidewalk, soaked through, her heart racing. She had touched a world she didn't belong to, a silver card, a billionaire's son, a man whose every move could alter markets. But the image she couldn't shake was not the fleet of SUVs or the men in dark coats. It was Alexander Westcott, a striking figure in the rain, his voice breaking as he whispered his son's name. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain-soaked coats. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Alexander Westcott strode through the sliding doors, his presence filling the sterile corridor. He had changed nothing of himself, not the tailored suit now drying stiff at the shoulders, not the calm authority in his stride. Yet the mask of the CEO faltered in the way his hand lingered on the stretcher as his son was wheeled away. Maya lingered near the entrance, unsure why she had followed the convoy. Something about leaving felt impossible. She had touched the boy's shallow breath, held the silver card, and dialed the number that carried her into this moment. Alexander turned, eyes finding her again. The same cold blue that had cut through the storm, but now softened by exhaustion. You came. I wanted to make sure he's okay, she said quietly, clutching her damp jacket. For a moment, the hall shrank to the space between them. Alexander studied her like a man weighing risks against instinct. You saw him first. That matters. Before she could reply, a doctor approached. Mr. Westcott, we've stabilized him. He's responding to oxygen. But he was poisoned with a fast-acting sedative. Lab work will confirm what kind. Alexander's jaw tightened. Deliberate? Highly likely. The words dropped like stones into the air. Maya's stomach turned. Poison. Not an accident. Not a fainting spell in the rain. Someone had wanted that boy unconscious, or worse. Alexander's hand flexed at his side. His voice remained even, but his eyes burned. Keep him under observation. No one enters without clearance. The doctor nodded and hurried away. Alexander turned back to Maya. The storm in him had not passed. It lived behind his composure. "Why were you at that bus stop?" "I was finishing my shift," Maya said. "It's on my way home. That's all." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you didn't see anyone else?" "No," she said, then paused. "But when I bent down, it felt wrong. Like someone left him there, not like he collapsed." The words made his jaw harden. "Left him," he repeated, as if testing the truth in her tone. For the first time, Maya caught the dual edges of him, the cold authority that demanded answers, and the desperate tenderness that had whispered, "Aiden," in the rain. Her voice softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep." His expression shifted, the steel giving way for just a breath. "No, you didn't." From down the hall, the rhythmic beep of monitors echoed, pulling him back. He looked past her toward the guarded room where his son lay, then back at her, a decision forming. "You've stepped into something larger than you realize," Alexander said. "It's dangerous. You should walk away." Maya's fingers tightened around her bag strap. "And if I do, who's left to tell the truth about what I saw?" The corners of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, but the faint recognition of a strength he hadn't expected from a waitress in a soaked jacket. Before either could say more, Dana Chu appeared, her voice clipped. "We traced the compound, links to Victor Kozel, and sir, this wasn't random. Someone on the inside helped." The hall seemed to narrow further, the walls closing in with the weight of betrayal. Alexander closed his hand around the silver card, the engraving pressing into his skin like a vow. He had built an empire to shield his son, and yet tonight, that empire had placed him in more danger than any stranger on the street. Maya watched him, realizing she had stepped into a story that was no longer about chance. It was about survival. The conference room on the 12th floor of Westcott Industries buzzed with low voices, monitors glowing with streams of code and surveillance footage. Rain still streaked the windows, city lights fractured in the drops. Alexander stood at the head of the long table, his navy suit now pressed clean, but his eyes shadowed. The silver card rested between his fingers, its edges biting into his skin as though to keep him grounded. Dr. Patel cleared his throat, his calm voice echoing through the tension. "The lab confirms it. Your son was given a concentrated sedative, delivered orally. Dosage high enough to immobilize, not kill." "Not yet," Dana Chu cut in sharply, her posture rigid. "Victor Kozel is sending a message. He's probing for weak spots. This wasn't about money, it was about humiliation." Maya sat quietly at the far end of the room, feeling out of place in her borrowed jacket. She hadn't meant to end up here, but Alexander had asked her to come. Asked, not ordered. Her eyes flicked to him. For all his power, he looked less like the untouchable CEO and more like a father haunted by what he'd nearly lost. "Who had access?" Alexander's voice was low, controlled, but each word carried the weight of command. Dana tapped the screen in front of her. A photo appeared. Eli Ward, early 30s. A contracted IT technician with access to internal systems. Ward's credentials were used to mask the intrusion. Logs show his badge at multiple restricted entries. He's our breach. Maya leaned forward, frowning. "So, someone he trusted betrayed him?" The words slipped out before she could stop herself. Alexander's gaze cut to her, piercing but not unkind. "Exactly." For a moment silence fell again, the hum of servers filling the room. Then Alexander turned back to his team. "Find him. Quietly, no leaks. If Kozel wants fear, we'll give him silence instead." Dana nodded, already relaying instructions into her earpiece. Maya shifted in her seat, her voice trembling slightly. "What about Aiden? What if they try again?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "They won't. Not while I breathe." The conviction in his voice silenced everyone, but when his eyes softened as they met Maya's, she saw something deeper. Fear threaded through iron resolve. Hours later, in the quiet of the hospital, Alexander stood at Aiden's bedside. The boy's chest rose steadily under the pale sheets, monitors casting a soft glow across his face. Maya lingered by the door, uncertain if she was intruding, but Alexander gestured for her to stay. "He was poisoned because of me," Alexander said quietly, his hand brushing Aiden's hair back. "Because of the empire I built. Every decision I make paints a target on his back." Maya hesitated, then stepped closer. "That's not on you. It's on the people who chose to hurt him." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "You think so, but when you build a world out of walls and rivals, you forget that your family lives inside those walls too." His thumb traced the silver card he'd set on the nightstand, the engraving gleaming under the hospital light. "I created this to protect him, but tonight, it wasn't enough." Maya looked at the boy, then back at Alexander. "Maybe protection isn't about walls or cards. Maybe it's about who stands with you when the walls break." Her words hung between them, quiet but steady. Alexander's eyes lingered on her, a trace of something unspoken flickering there. Recognition, maybe even gratitude. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but inside that sterile room, the storm was only beginning. Eli Ward's face glared back from half a dozen monitors in the secure command suite. His employee photo looked ordinary enough, tired eyes, a cheap tie, the kind of man who blended in. Yet, the betrayal burned brighter than the glow of the screens. Alexander Westcott stood rigid, one hand braced against the table, the other clenched around the silver card as though squeezing it could steady him. He had given Ward access. He had signed the clearance. The failure was personal. Dana Chu reported crisply. "We traced encrypted transfers from Ward's terminal. Cozel's servers lit up the same hour Aiden was poisoned. This wasn't random. They wanted to remind you how close they can cut." Maya sat near the back, hands folded in her lap. She felt small in this room of experts and flashing data, but Alexander had asked her to observe. She wasn't sure why, until she caught the way his eyes flicked toward her in quiet moments, grounding himself not just in authority, but in someone outside the fortress of his empire. Alexander's voice was low, edged with steel. "They touched my son to rattle me, but it's Ward's betrayal that tells me what I already feared. Cozel has help inside." Dr. Patel entered, carrying a folder. "Aiden is stabilizing. He's conscious, though weak. He asked for you." The CEO's composure cracked for a moment. His shoulders eased, the card loosened in his grip. He turned toward the door, but Dana stopped him. "Sir, we can move now. My team can intercept Ward before he vanishes." Alexander's eyes narrowed. The boardroom man warred with the father. Finally, he shook his head. "Not tonight. Aiden first. Always." The decision surprised Maya. She had expected him to pursue vengeance immediately. Instead, she saw a man torn between empire and son, choosing the boy for once. Later, in the quiet of the hospital room, Alexander sat at Aiden's bedside. The boy's eyes fluttered open, glazed but aware. "Dad?" "I'm here," Alexander said, leaning close. The strength in his voice wavered, just enough for Maya, standing in the doorway, to hear the man behind the CEO. Aiden's lips trembled. "I was scared." "So was I," Alexander whispered. He brushed his son's damp hair back, the way he had when Aiden was little. "But you're safe now." Maya's throat tightened. This wasn't the Alexander Westcott on magazine covers or financial reports. This was a father, stripped raw by fear and relief, holding on to what mattered most. When Aiden drifted back into sleep, Alexander remained seated, his hand still wrapped around his son's. Maya stepped softly into the room. "You made the right call," she said gently. "Coming here first." He glanced up, blue eyes weary but burning. "Every headline, every billion-dollar deal, none of it matters if I lose him." "You haven't lost him," Maya said. "He's right here, and he needs you more than your empire does." The silence stretched, heavy with truths unspoken. Finally, Alexander exhaled. Ward's betrayal confirms what I feared all along. My world isn't safe for him. I've spent years building walls, but all I've done is trap him inside my battles. He looked down at the silver card on the nightstand, its engraving catching the faint hospital light. I thought this was protection, but maybe it was just a reminder of the danger always circling us. Maya studied him, her voice soft. Maybe it's not about the card. Maybe it's about what you do after the call. Alexander's gaze lingered on her. For the first time, he felt the sting of something deeper than betrayal. Guilt that all his victories meant little against the cost his son bore. And in that room, with the steady beep of monitors echoing, he began to wonder if he could still be both, the leader to millions and the father to one. The hospital room dimmed as night pressed against the windows. Machines hummed steady, casting green and amber glows across the boy's pale face. Alexander Westcott sat in silence, elbows on his knees, his large frame folded down beside the bed of his only son. The navy suit looked out of place here, armored fabric against the soft vulnerability of a child's breathing. Maya Torres lingered by the doorway, unsure if she belonged. Hours had passed since she'd made the call that changed everything, and yet Alexander had not left Aiden's side. The man who commanded boardrooms and headlines now sat still, head bowed, as if every deal he'd ever won had cost him this moment. "You should rest," she said softly. Alexander's head lifted. Deep blue eyes, ringed with fatigue, found hers. "Rest is a luxury I forfeited years ago." "You can't keep running on nothing," Maya pressed gently. "Not when he needs you awake." He studied her a long moment, then leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. "I built an empire thinking it would protect him. Steel, firewalls, contracts, but all it did was paint a target on his back. Tonight, he nearly paid for my ambition." The confession hung in the sterile air. Maya stepped further inside. "You're blaming yourself for someone else's cruelty." His jaw tightened. "I missed his school plays. His birthdays were managed by staff. I told myself I was providing him a future. But what good is a future if the present slips through your fingers?" Maya hesitated, then pulled a chair closer. She wasn't sure what made her bold. Maybe the way his voice cracked on the word future. "You're still here. You still have time to be more than a name on a company letterhead." Alexander looked down at Aiden, the boy's hand limp in his larger one. His thumb brushed the faint line of an IV. "When I held that silver card in the rain, all I could think was how fragile he looked. For the first time in years, I felt powerless, and maybe that's what scares me most. That the one thing I can't control is being his father." Maya's chest tightened at the rawness in his words. She leaned forward, her voice barely above the hum of machines. "Power doesn't make you a father. Presence does. And tonight, you chose presence." His eyes met hers again, searching, as if testing the truth in her tone. Then, with the smallest shift, his shoulders eased. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he murmured. "Someone who told me the same thing before I lost her." Silence settled, heavy but not empty. In the hall, Dana Chu's voice cut through, muffled but urgent, speaking into her comms. Alexander straightened, the CEO returning in an instant. "Report," he called quietly. Dana stepped in, her expression sharp. "Ward has disappeared. No trace at his apartment, but Kozel's chatter has spiked. They know you've linked him to the breach." Alexander rose, his height filling the room again, his shadow stretching across the bed. "Then they'll come harder next time." He glanced back at his sleeping son, then at Maya. For a moment, two worlds collided, the corporate war outside and the fragile peace inside. "I can't fight both battles," he said quietly. "Not alone." Maya's voice was steady. "Then don't. Let someone stand with you." Alexander studied her, this waitress who had stumbled into his storm. For years he had trusted contracts, walls, and men with weapons. Now, he wondered if the first true trust he'd felt in years had arrived soaking wet under a bus station light. The silver card gleamed on the nightstand. Once it had been his symbol of control. Now, in her presence, it began to feel like a lifeline toward something far rarer: faith. The next morning broke gray over Chicago, a heavy sky pressing down on the skyline. Alexander Westcott stood at the hospital window, his reflection split between the city behind him and the fragile boy sleeping in the bed. He adjusted his cufflinks out of habit, though they felt useless here, more armor than need. Behind him, the quiet shuffle of footsteps. Maya Torres entered carrying 2 coffees, her diner uniform swapped for a plain sweater and jeans. She hesitated before offering one. "Thought you could use this." He turned, taking the cup. "Thank you." His voice was softer than the one she had heard in the rain, but still carried the weight of a man used to being obeyed. He took a sip, exhaled, and almost smiled. "You didn't have to come back." "I wanted to," Maya said simply. Her eyes flicked toward Aiden. "And you said last night I'd stepped into something bigger. Well, I guess I already did. No sense in pretending I didn't." His gaze lingered on her. He saw no calculation in her face, only steadiness. After a long pause, he spoke. "You risked your safety for my son. That makes you a target too. Men connected to Causal have been seen around your neighborhood." Maya froze. "You mean, they know I called you?" Alexander nodded, his tone firm. "Yes, which is why I'm offering you protection. Safe housing, security detail. You won't pay a cent." She shook her head quickly. "I don't want your money. This isn't charity." His blue eyes locked on hers. "It's necessity. If you refuse, you put yourself in danger for no reason." Maya hesitated, fear flashing across her face, but then her chin lifted. "I'll accept your protection. Not your money. I won't be bought." For a moment, silence. Then Alexander inclined his head, almost as if conceding to her terms. "Fair enough." The door opened and Dana Chu entered briskly, tablet in hand. "Ward's trail has gone cold, but Kozol's men left a message outside one of our facilities, spray paint, numbers that match your emergency card sequence. It's deliberate." Alexander's grip tightened around his cup. The silver card felt heavier in his pocket. His empire had always been his shield, but now it was the weapon his enemies wielded against him, through his son, through anyone close. When Dana left, Maya stepped closer. "You look ready to go to war." "I have to be," Alexander admitted. "But last night, when I saw my men preparing for retaliation, I realized something." He pulled the card from his pocket, holding it up so it caught the hospital light. "This isn't about revenge. It's about the moment you called this number. You saved his life, not my empire." Maya's throat tightened. "I only did what anyone would have done." His eyes softened. "No, most people would have walked away. You didn't." At that moment, a weak voice stirred from the bed. "Maya?" Both turned. Aiden was awake, his face pale, but his eyes open, fixed on her. He tried to sit up, his small hand reaching toward her. "You're the reason I'm still here." Maya blinked back tears, moving to his side. She took his hand gently. "No, Aiden. You're strong. You held on." Alexander watched the exchange, something shifting inside him. For years, his son had been sheltered inside walls of protection, kept apart from the world. And yet, in the presence of this waitress, he had opened up more freely than Alexander had seen in years. The silver card gleamed between Alexander's fingers. No longer just a tool of control. It was now a bridge, between fear and trust, between isolation and connection. And for the first time in a long while, Alexander Westcott felt the faint stir of hope. The storm outside had passed, but inside the hospital, tension hung heavy. Alexander Westcott stood near the window, silver card glinting between his fingers. In the hallway beyond, his security team murmured into radios, their movements sharp, efficient. But Maya's attention was fixed on him, on the way his jaw tightened, the way his shoulders carried weight beyond boardrooms. Through the half-open door, she glimpsed men in tactical jackets loading gear into black cases. She stiffened. What are they doing? Alexander's eyes flicked to her. Preparing for what comes next. Her chest tightened. What does that mean? Victor Kozel wants a war, Alexander said evenly. I intend to show him we're not weak. Maya's pulse spiked. She looked past him at the sleeping boy on the bed. Aiden doesn't need a war. He needs his father. His expression hardened. If I don't strike back, he'll never be safe. Maya stepped closer, her voice trembling yet firm. I didn't call that number so you could unleash an army. I called because a boy was dying in the rain. That's all that mattered. For a moment, silence crashed between them. Alexander's blue eyes locked on hers, authority and vulnerability colliding. In his hand, the silver card caught the light, a mirror of the night she'd found it. You think I want this? His voice cracked. You think I chose to have my son poisoned so I could prove a point? I think you're about to lose yourself in revenge, Maya whispered. The words landed deeper than he expected. His hand trembled around the card. He turned away, staring at his reflection in the glass, seeing not the CEO but a father unraveling. Behind them, the door creaked open. Aiden stirred, eyes fluttering half open. Dad? His voice was small, strained. Alexander rushed to his side instantly, his broad shoulders hunched low, his large hand enveloping his son's. I'm here. Always. Maya stood at the foot of the bed, watching the duality play out before her. The ruthless man who could summon fleets of SUVs and security teams, and the father who whispered promises against his son's ear. When Aiden drifted back into sleep, Alexander remained seated, his thumb stroking the boy's knuckles. The silver card lay on the nightstand, a small gleam of metal that seemed to bind them all in this fragile moment. Finally, Alexander's voice broke the silence. You remind me why I built all this. Not for power, for him, but every step I took turned me into something else. Maya's reply was steady. Then step back. You don't have to fight Kozel the way he expects. You can choose differently. He looked at her, the faintest trace of relief flickering in his weary eyes. She had no armor, no empire, yet her courage cut through the storm of his world. Outside, the security men still waited for orders. But in that hospital room, Alexander Westcott hesitated, for the first time in years. And in his hesitation, Maya saw hope that the man holding his son's hand could win over the CEO ready for battle. The silver card gleamed in the faint light, no longer just a symbol of power. It was a reminder of the moment she had chosen life over fear, and a promise that he might yet choose the same. The hospital corridor was quiet, save for the steady hum of machines behind closed doors. Alexander Westcott pushed himself away from the window, fatigue etched in his strong features. He had not left Aiden's side for more than minutes at a time. Yet, when he saw Maya Torres enter with a small paper bag from the diner, something softened in him. I figured hospital food doesn't cut it, she said, offering it. For once, his warm smile wasn't a mask. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Maya replied simply. Her eyes flicked to Aiden, who stirred at the sound of voices. The boy's face lit up when he saw her. You came back. Of course I did, Maya said, pulling the chair closer to his bed. Someone had to bring decent soup. Aiden laughed weakly, then reached for her hand. You're the reason I'm still here. Alexander froze at the words. His son rarely let people close, rarely showed this kind of trust. He watched the connection between them, his guarded boy and the waitress who had stepped into their storm without hesitation. Something in his chest tightened. Dad, Aiden said, turning to him. Can she visit again? Please? Alexander glanced at Maya, who sat awkwardly under his gaze. Then he nodded. Yes, she can. The boy smiled faintly before drifting back into sleep, his fingers still curled loosely around Maya's hand. Silence lingered once more, broken only by the beep of monitors. Alexander cleared his throat. He doesn't open up easily, not even to family, but he trusts you already. Maya shrugged gently. Maybe because I didn't treat him like a headline, just a kid who needed help. Alexander exhaled slowly, his broad shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. I've been so focused on protecting him that I forgot what it feels like to let him breathe, to let him see people beyond these walls. Her eyes softened. Then maybe the best thing you can do is let him choose who he lets in. Alexander studied her, searching for motives, but found none. Just steadiness. Quiet strength. He nodded once. Then I'll start by listening. Later that evening, Maya sat with Aiden while Alexander stepped out for a rare call. The boy chatted in hushed tones about school, robotics, things he'd never shared with security guards or tutors. Maya laughed with him, her presence warming the sterile hospital room. When Alexander returned, he paused at the doorway. He saw his son's face brighter, his laughter freer, and for the first time in years he realized how small his empire was compared to this. He leaned against the frame, his eyes falling to the silver card resting on the nightstand. Once, it had been his shield. Tonight, it felt like a bridge between his son and a woman who had nothing to gain by staying yet chose to anyway. For the first time, Alexander allowed himself to imagine a future not measured in headlines or contracts, but in moments like this. His son, smiling, the room alive with something he thought he had lost. Trust. Morning light filtered through blinds, painting the hospital room in thin stripes of gold. Outside, the media storm had already begun. Reporters clustered near the hospital entrance, microphones raised, rumors buzzing about the poisoning of Alexander Westcott's son. Inside, Alexander adjusted his tie, though his eyes stayed on Aiden. The boy was stronger today, sitting upright, fiddling with the controls on his bed. Maya poured orange juice from a plastic pitcher, her presence quiet but grounding. "Dad," Aiden said suddenly, "why are there cameras outside?" Alexander paused, then crouched by the bed. "Because people think our lives belong on their front page." "But I don't want to be news." The words pierced deeper than any headline ever could. Alexander's jaw tightened. "You won't have to be. I'll shield you." Maya set the cup down, her voice steady. "He's right, you know. The media will twist this however they want, and they're going to come after me too." He straightened, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. "My team can handle them. All you need to say is nothing." "That's exactly what I plan to do," Maya said firmly. "Aiden doesn't need me talking to strangers about his life. He needs me to protect it." Alexander studied her, blue eyes piercing, then nodded slowly. "Good. Silence will shield him more than any press release." But outside the walls, rumors already spread like fire. Competitors whispered that Westcott Industries was vulnerable. Journalists speculated about security breaches, about family secrets. The story was no longer just about a boy poisoned. It was about the empire that might be crumbling behind him. Later, in the hallway, Dana Chu approached with her tablet. "The press is circling. They want a statement. They've identified Maya. Some are calling her the mystery woman who saved your son." Alexander's gaze flicked toward the door where Maya sat with Aiden, helping him adjust his blanket. "And how is she holding up? She's been hounded online already. Reporters digging into her past, old debts, family. They'll spin whatever they find." A muscle ticked in Alexander's jaw. "Protect her. Anything they dig up, bury it." "Yes, sir," Dana said, then hesitated. "But sir, she's not asking for protection. She's giving it. To him. To you." Alexander turned away, his reflection caught in the glass of a vending machine. A powerful man whose empire could silence enemies, yet who found himself relying on a waitress's courage. When he stepped back into the room, Maya looked up. "They're going to keep pushing, aren't they?" "Yes," he admitted, "and it will get worse before it gets better." She nodded once, resolute. Then let them push. I'm not saying a word. Aiden's trust matters more than any headline." Her words landed with weight, steady as stone. And, for the first time since the poisoning, Alexander felt something shift. Not in his company, not in his empire, but in himself. Because silence, loyalty, and love were shields stronger than any firewall he could build. A week had passed since the poisoning, but the memory hadn't left Alexander Westcott. Not the look on Maya's face when he'd offered her money, not the trembling in Aiden's hands when he asked if the people who hurt him would come back. In the quiet of his penthouse office, overlooking the riverfront, Alexander stood alone, staring at a digital map displayed on the floor-to-ceiling screen. City routes pulsed in soft red lines, every one of them connected to a known incident: assault, robbery, disappearance. The data Dana Chu had pulled was stark. 42% of late-night assaults in the city occurred within 2 blocks of transit stops. His jaw tightened. Across the room, Dana watched him silently. "You said Causal's men were tracked to that alley," Alexander murmured. She nodded. "That bus station isn't even lit properly. No security, no cameras, easy target." He nodded, then tapped a point on the screen. "We're changing that." Dana raised an eyebrow. "Sir? I'm done reacting. No more bodyguards in shadows. No more counterstrikes behind closed doors. We're not a private army." He turned, eyes piercing. "We're going public." An hour later, Alexander stepped onto the stage of a packed city press conference. The media, already in a frenzy over the Westcott poisoning scandal, was hungry for a response. Rumors of corporate sabotage had made headlines for days. The crowd quieted as Alexander approached the mic. The silver emergency card, now worn and dented, rested in his suit pocket. He drew a slow breath. "There comes a time," he began, "when a father must stop being a fortress and become a bridge." Cameras clicked. "Last week, my son, Aiden, was attacked, poisoned, left unconscious in the cold, and he was saved, not by money, not by power, but by a stranger." He paused, the room frozen. "A waitress named Maya Torres." Gasps, flashes. She found him outside a bus station, the same one dozens of other workers pass by each night after closing shifts. She could have walked away. Instead, she made a call that saved my son's life. He stepped back from the podium briefly, then returned. "We've spent billions securing data infrastructure, but what good is protecting bytes if we can't protect bodies?" He clicked a remote, and the screen behind him lit up with a new logo, a crescent moon over a transit route, with the tagline, "The Night Route Initiative." "Starting this month," Alexander announced, "Westcott Industries will fund 24-hour lighting, staffed safety hubs, emergency call boxes, and patrolling security teams across the top 50 most dangerous transit corridors in Chicago, especially those used by night shift workers." Maya, watching from the back of the room, stood frozen. Alexander continued, "There will be partnerships with local restaurants, clinics, and shelters, and every station will have a hotline, not to report crimes after they happen but to prevent them before they begin." Journalists whispered. Some clapped. Others simply watched in stunned silence. "I built a tech empire to make things safer online," he said. "But my son almost died in the real world. That won't happen again. Not to him. Not to anyone." After the conference, as the press swarmed around his staff, Alexander walked through a side door where Maya stood waiting. She looked stunned. "That wasn't just for me, right?" she asked, eyes wide. He smiled softly. "It was because of you." She looked down, flustered. "I didn't do anything special." "You cared," he said. "In this city, that's rare enough." She held his gaze. "Is Aiden okay?" "He's better today," Alexander said quietly. "And he asked if you'd come by." Maya blinked, her throat tightening. "I will," she said. He handed her something then, a laminated card, silver, with engraved text. her name, Aiden's name, and one number. "No more blank emergency cards," Alexander said. "You're part of the circle now." The soft beep of machines echoed in the hospital room as Aiden flipped through the pages of a comic book, propped up by pillows. A light drizzle tapped against the window pane, and for the first time in days, the tension in the boy's shoulders had eased. Maya stepped in quietly, wiping raindrops from her jacket. Her eyes lit up as soon as she saw him. "You again?" Aiden grinned. "Thought you'd disappear after all the cameras showed up." Maya held up a paper bag. "I brought donuts. Figured your dad only feeds you green juice and protein bars." Aiden laughed, the sound light and unguarded. He tried to, until the nurse ratted him out. Behind them, Alexander stood by the doorway, watching the two. He had seen Maya step into their lives like a gust of unexpected wind, disrupting, grounding, and somehow healing at the same time. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Only if you don't touch the Boston cream," Maya replied with mock sternness. Alexander smiled, his usual sharpness replaced by something gentler. He sat beside his son, but his attention was focused on Maya. After a moment, he reached into his blazer and pulled out a small velvet box. Maya's eyes narrowed. "I don't like surprises." "This one's safe," Alexander said. "I promise." He opened it and revealed a sleek, engraved silver emergency card, this time not blank. On the front, it read, "Maya Torres, Aiden Westcott, priority clearance, direct line, Alexander Westcott." Her breath caught. "I had it made the day after the press conference," he said. "I realized the original card Aiden carried was designed to bring him back to me. But the next one, it should lead him to someone who actually cared first." Maya blinked quickly, overwhelmed. "I'm just a waitress." "You're the woman who found him in the rain," Alexander replied, "who refused money, faced threats, and still showed up every day after. That doesn't make you just anything." Aiden chimed in, mouthful of donut. "She's like a bodyguard, but with better snacks." They laughed. Alexander continued, "I've built a life behind gates and passwords. But I want Aiden to grow up with people who show up. You've done that." Maya looked at the card again, then tucked it into her jacket pocket. "You sure your world's ready for someone like me in it?" Alexander's gaze softened. "My world wasn't ready for someone like you. That's why it needed you." A gentle silence settled in. Later, as nurses came to check vitals and prep discharge papers, Maya helped Aiden tie his shoes. She didn't hover, didn't fuss, just helped, steady and calm. Alexander watched them, a lump rising in his throat. Years of building walls, crafting empires, negotiating mergers, and all it took was one night, one waitress, one call to remind him what truly mattered. When they left the hospital, Alexander offered Maya a ride. She declined. "I've got a shift tonight," she smiled. "Late crowd loves me." "You have protection now," he said seriously. She raised the card. "I've got backup." Then she added, quieter, "And if you ever forget what this card really means, it's not just about calling when there's danger." "No?" he asked. "No," Maya said. "It's about knowing someone will pick up when you do." Their eyes met. No contracts, no headlines, no performances. Just trust. Just family in the making. The hum of servers once defined Alexander Westcott's world. Now, it was the clatter of forks at the kitchen table, the sound of Aiden's laughter echoing down a hallway lined with hand-drawn comics and piano notes, and the scent of garlic toast drifting in from the oven. Dinner was no longer a rarity. It was routine. Alexander sat at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, tie gone, watching his son describe a dream he had about flying cars and donut-shaped planets. Maya sat across, sipping from a chipped mug, nodding along, fully present. This was not how the board envisioned the life of a tech titan. But Alexander didn't care. That morning, he had walked into Westcott Industries headquarters not to fire someone, but to promote Maya Torres, officially. The press release had stunned everyone. Maya Torres appointed community liaison for Night Route Initiative. Her first order of business? Implementing late-night support booths across the South Loop. Her second? Hiring women like herself, waitresses, night janitors, transit workers, as team leads. These are the people who know what 2 a.m. really feels like, she had told him. They're the ones who get it. The initiative had already prevented 3 reported assaults within its first week. The hotline buzzed constantly, mostly with scared voices, some just lonely. But people were calling, and someone was always answering. Alexander's schedule shifted too. Fewer all-nighters in the command room, fewer boardroom appearances. He still closed deals, but only after a school drop-off and dinner were on the calendar. His assistant, once overwhelmed, now commented, "Sir, I didn't know your calendar could even fit a movie night." He had smiled, because last Friday, he and Aiden had watched Iron Giant under a blanket, Maya curled up in the armchair nearby. Not as a guest, not as help, but as family. That silver card? Aiden carried his still, but now, he joked, it meant, call Maya before you call Dad. Alexander carried his too. But it wasn't just engraved with names. On the back, Maya had scribbled in pen, "Don't forget why you built the empire." M. He looked at it often, sometimes before meetings, sometimes when the city seemed too broken to fix, and sometimes just because her handwriting calmed him. Tonight, after dinner, Aiden went to finish homework, and Alexander stepped onto the balcony. The city stretched before him. Towers, lights, motion. The world he once ruled with algorithms and acquisitions. Now he looked at it differently. Each light was someone walking home from a shift. Each bus stop a decision to care or to turn away. Each call a chance to save a life. He felt her step beside him. Maya leaned on the railing, wind tugging at her hair. "You still think you're the one who saved Aiden?" He glanced sideways. "You think I didn't?" She smiled, eyes soft. "You answered the phone, but you weren't the first one who stopped in the rain." Alexander chuckled. "No, I wasn't." He reached into his pocket and held out the silver card. "Still works." Maya looked at it for a moment, then met his gaze. "Good, because one day you might need saving too." "I already was," he whispered. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, the city sprawling below, not as a battlefield, but as something fragile, worth protecting. From that night on, no card was ever blank again, because the greatest emergency line was love. End.